But I think it is being, transferred to Facebook now. So we can start. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be welcoming Roza Saigitova, Dr. Roza Saigitova from University of Portsmouth, to talk about her research projects dealing with United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 12, and even more specifically, goal number 12.3, which says that by 2030, we need to halve per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses along production and supply chain, including post-harvest losses. For this reason, the whole organization had been formed, which actually had been there for a while, but Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has taken a custody of this goal, as far as I know. And they have created a food loss index, which is one of the indicators of this SDG 12.3.1a even. And this index basically says that measures losses along the food supply chain, starting from post-harvest losses on the farm and including the retail stage. So why do we care about food loss? I think Rosa will tell you a bit more, but just as an introduction, reducing food loss and waste is critical to reduce production costs and increase efficiency of the food system and improve the food security and nutrition, and basically contribute towards environmental sustainability. And according to the State of Food and Agriculture report of 2019, the percentage of food lost after harvest on farm and at the transport, storage, and processing stages stands at 13.8% globally, which is around $400 billion. Given the amount of and the gravity of the problem, it is the UN invites efforts for data collection for countries to target interventions at different stages of the value chain to reduce food losses. And Rosa and her team's projects deal with this kind of scientific work directly. I'm super excited to learn more, and hopefully everyone will learn a bit more about this SDG of United Nations. Bye, Rosa. Thank you for joining us. Just a little bit to introduce Rosa and also to introduce myself. I'm a affiliate member of UNEC Cognitive Economics Center. So my research is most experimental and behavioral. And I also work at the University of Portsmouth, and Rosa is my colleague at the University of Portsmouth in Accounting, Economics and Finance department. And Rosa's work deals with a number of different questions, but one of her projects, or actually a few of her projects, deal with food loss. And Rosa, I'll leave it to you now. You talk about yourself, and if you can share your screen, share your slides, we can then continue from there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Zahra, for introduction. As Zahra mentioned, I'm working at the University of Portsmouth, so I'm gonna try to share my screen now. And hopefully you can, maybe, can you, I think can you see it now? My screen.
Yes, we can see, but it's not in a presentation mode.
Yeah. Come on. Okay.
Yeah, all good now.
So yes, so I'm gonna talk about my project, which is looking at the issue of food waste and how it could be tackled from a perspective of managing it as well as through transparency and reporting. So I'm working on this project with a number of colleagues. So some of them are UK based, and this is Professor Lisa Jack, Professor Josie McLaren, Yutong, Dina, Stephen. We work on this issue from perspective of reporting. And then with Professor Vladimir Filipov and Professor Lydia Volashuk, who are from Odessa Polytechnic National University, we are looking at how food waste could be managed in food retail sector. So part of the project that is looking at the Ukrainian context and management of food waste has been sponsored by the UK Research and Innovation and Research England. So I would like to acknowledge that. So as I said, and as Zahra mentioned, I'm looking at two sides of this project. Some of the background has already been discussed by Zahra, but from probably economic perspective. Indeed, the issue with food waste is quite important. So globally, it's about 33–40% of food waste that is produced is being wasted. And the problem is there are a number of problems, economic issues that Zahra mentioned, like resource efficiency, increased cost in production of food waste, increased consumption, but also cost associated with food loss and waste. But there are also environmental issues, the degradation of land, or usage of water, or impact on the climate change, and etc. But another issue, which probably one of the important issues, is the social impact, is that access of people to healthy food. Quite often the food that is still edible is being thrown away instead of giving to people who are in need and have no access to that food because of the financial difficulties that they face. So there is some issue with the social injustice involved in that too. So in the European Union, it's estimated that about 59 million tons of food is being wasted in the recent study, which actually has reduced from the previous calculation. I think in 2011, it was about 90 million tons of food was wasted. So what is actually food waste? So a Food and Agriculture Organization that is linked to United Nations identifies kind of two stages of food loss and waste. So food loss is basically a loss or decrease in the edible food mass at the production, post-harvest, and processing stages of food chain. So that's the early stages of the food supply chain. And food waste is a discard of this edible food at the retail and consumer level. So that's the food that has been targeted for the human consumption, but didn't reach the table of the humans. And in that context, retail has a significant impact as it has an impact on the production level of the supply chain. So they could control what producers are supplying them. They could outline in their contracts the shape, for example, of the fruits and vegetables that they would like, the category of those fruits and vegetables, how it is packed, and etc. So that has an additional cost, and if there is shape maybe of those fruits and vegetables that they don't like, they wouldn't accept that, and that goes to waste potentially. Or they could also impact on the behavior of consumers through increasing their purchasing. For example, when we see these offers of buy one, get one free, right? So instead of buying what we really want to buy, the amount that we really need, we could potentially jump into that offer and buy additional food that consumers also then potentially are throwing away, because at consumer level, it's huge as well. So that is the big role for the retailers, because they have an impact on the early stage of the food supply chain as well as the latest stage of supply chain. So let's have a look at the practice project that we are doing. So we look at the literature first, and the literature identifies a number of contributing factors to the food waste. So some of them is mismanagement or replenishment policies of retail that has obviously impact on the early stages of the supply chain. There's some issues with inconsistent demand. So managers have quite a difficult task sometimes to solve when they have to identify how much they should be ordering so it's not wasted. But at the same time, they have filled in all the shelves in their store. So there are no empty shelves, but at the same time, they don't throw away food too. So that's quite difficult for bigger stores to solve. There's some potentially issues with legislation where some organizations find it difficult maybe to donate food, or there's some tax implications related to that as well. Or maybe there are best before labels. So some companies now we can see in the stores remove best before label from the fruits and vegetables, so we can look through using our eyes at the shape and whether it is still a good quality fruits and vegetables, can we eat them or not, rather than just using the best before label on the packaging. So all of these drivers lead to that food is being expired before it is being sold. And that is the key issue of food waste in retail. The number of studies that look at the food management in retail. So we can see that there is a reduction, as I said earlier, in food waste from 90 million tons to 58 million tons. So measures are actually working. So they should be implemented in the stores more aggressively, probably. We can see from the literature that there is a difference between larger organizations, potentially, and small organizations, because there is a difference in management style, and that has an impact on preventive strategies in the organizations as well. The number of approaches that are kind of leading, that are utilized by the retailers, food reuse, one of the leading, which is followed by reduction and preventive measures, and then with recycling, food waste recycling. Some studies find that there is a lack of staff training, but training could actually benefit organizations, because it could save in cost when a staff knows how to deal with maybe with the food that is near expiration. They could rotate maybe that food to make sure that it is sold faster, or maybe they could reduce the price for the food. So people buy it at discount, and etc. There is a framework that organization could use as a guide to prevent food waste, or reduce at least food waste. So the first one that is identified in the European Union is the preventive. That should be your first option. So using maybe good forecasting system, so there is no food waste generated. It is followed by reused for human consumption. So retail should aim to distribute, maybe it's among employees potentially, or reduce the price, or give it to charities, and etc. This is followed by reuse to animal feed. So again, that the food that is no longer edible by humans should be directed for the animal feed. It could be reused or recycled. So maybe you would take the potatoes that doesn't look so good anymore and use it, reprocess it and make it a mashed potato and sell it as a cooked food instead. Recycling, another option that, for example, composting or anaerobic digestion. This is followed by recovery for biofuel, and the least is disposal to the landfill or sewage. So that's the framework that is provided by the European Union. So in the literature, we see that there is a issue, the gaps in the literature, that the store size we see has an impact, but most of the studies focus on supermarkets rather than on smaller companies. And we see also that it could be the issue that food waste is risky in smaller firms because they have issues with resources and negotiating power with production, for example, and their suppliers. So we also see that the majority of literature is focusing on developed countries. So we decided to look at the developing context. So our aim was to examine the food waste volumes and its management in food retail SMEs, with focus on a developing context, and we focus on the Ukrainian context. So we wanted to explore the exposure of Ukraine to food loss and waste issue, and the attitudes of the managers towards food waste, and how they're managing currently food waste, and what potentially are drivers for that management and the barriers. So we looked at the secondary data available, so the statistical data, the regulations, but we also conducted primary research data collection. So we conducted survey of SME representatives, so owners, managers, and employees, to see the responses in terms of food waste management. So in terms of the regulatory context, the Ukraine joined the United Nations Sustainable Development and adopted SDGs for the 2016-2030 period. And the number of initiatives then been implemented to make sure that it is aligned with SDGs. But there is even a national waste strategy implemented until 2030, and a national plan on waste management, which defines various types of management, types of waste, including agricultural food losses. But that's kind of that's the focus on food losses rather than on food waste. So there is no discussion about what is food waste, and there is no focus on the later stages of the food supply chain. So it's early stages, food losses rather than food waste. And the Ukrainian Ecological League is concerned about that there is no discussion about or definition what means food waste. And that has an implication in terms of statistics and how it is perceived as well. So we can see that across different regions in Ukraine, that they measure food losses and food waste. So they provide this statistical data. We can see that food losses are higher than food waste, which is expected. And we can see that it's different across different regions. We can see that Dnipropetrovsk and Odessa regions are the leading regions in that. And our research, the primary research actually focuses on Odessa region. We also look at the statistical data in terms of what kind of food or category of food that is being wasted. And one of the leading is meat and meat produce, followed by, you can see, fruits and vegetables and a bakery. This is to some extent consistent with previous literature, but the problem is it's very costly to lose that categories of meat and meat produce, because meat and meat produce would have a significant impact on climate change as well, right? So especially beef, for example. So that has implication not just on food waste, on cost associated with food waste, but also, as we discussed earlier, on climate change too. But what we find that there is a difference between the previous slide I showed you, the statistics, and these statistics for the regions. It seems that potentially there is a disparity in measuring of food waste across regions, and what is being reported at the state level and what is being reported at the regional level. So that's an issue that we see in the statistical data. It could be related to the also the methodologies used, or maybe some of the regions are not included in the regional. So, for example, Kyiv would be a different unit, which is included in the total, but not maybe at the regional data. So we think that there is a need for this comprehensive system and clear strategy in regulation where food waste is actually separately identified and in terms of how it should be measured. In terms of the primary data, as I said, we conducted the survey, so we got 85 responses from retail SMEs. We see a number. The sample itself includes almost all representatives from the perspective of the people characteristics, the representatives of the stores. So we have in terms of the education, for example, there is a spread between college and university level, with majority having university level degree. In terms of the position in the company, we can see that people have we have owners 26%, managers 20%, and employee 35%, plus those who undertake all roles 19%. So we have quite a lot of people who have knowledge about the strategies within the sample, we would expect. And in terms of the number of years of experience, also quite diverse as well in terms of, so we expect to have quite holistic picture from that. And in terms of the responses, we can see that the majority of respondents identify that or believe that food waste is harmful and bad for the environment. They recognize that, they see that it is costly, financially costly as well. But the respondents' moral views demonstrate quite an opposite picture. The majority disagree, that it makes them feel guilty that people who do not have enough food basically don't get it, and food being wasted instead. And they don't feel about the impact of food waste on the environment either. So although they perceive food waste negatively, it doesn't trigger guilt for the impact among SME constituents. In terms of the food categories that are being wasted in SME retail, we see that a number of people say they don't have waste at all, which is to some extent questionable, but at least we can see the categories of food that being mostly wasted. Again, this could be related, the no waste response, to the measurement issue, so not realizing what means food waste. But again, we can identify the categories that are being wasted. So again, we can see that meat category is the leading, followed by fruits and vegetables, and then bakery as well. So this corresponds with some previous literature that also identifies this as commonly wasted food. But these categories pose significant economic implications. For example, the previous Ukrainian study by Kotikov and Babich estimate that meat is the main source of lost revenue due to food loss and waste in Ukraine. And also, again, that also links, as we discussed earlier, to the climate change potentially impact as well. The management strategies that are used in SMEs are to some extent similar that I discussed earlier today. So in Ukrainian SMEs, they prefer to reuse the food for human consumption. So potentially they distribute it among employees, or maybe discount, sell at discount to customers. So again, this would need to be further clarified in further studies, but that's what they've identified. So actually, no, we do mention it here. So they sell at discount products or redistribute with near expiration to charities or the community. This is then followed by the preventive measures. So, for example, they say they freeze food or they rotate food display. And then it is followed, unfortunately, by the disposal. Yeah, so the third category in Ukraine at the moment is a disposal. So it goes to the landfill or to the sewage. And only then it is followed by recycling or reuse. For example, baking something out of fruits or vegetables that is left and then sell it as a ready produce instead. They do say that they work with suppliers, so to avoid over ordering food, but also they don't have the power to pass back unsold food to the suppliers, which is the case in larger retail companies. In terms of barriers, they identify lack of awareness of training, so that needs to be looked at probably by the state to educate and to explain what actually food waste is. Another potential barrier is meeting health and safety guidelines. Again, it needs to be properly weighted, so you cannot sell things that are definitely harmful for the health, but maybe some of the items are still edible, so could be sold. As incentive for food waste management, the respondents identified financial incentive as the most important, which is followed by tax incentive. So again, that potentially is linked to, tax incentive linked to the issue that if you are giving away food to charities, you are paying VAT on the produce. So you end up paying more. So that is potentially that could be looked at by the government. So in terms of the kind of our concluding comments, we say that Ukraine probably needs to develop holistic infrastructure to allow retailers to adjust their strategies to actually deal with food waste and to be closer linked with the food waste framework provided by the European Union. We can see that, as we said, that most respondents use at the moment reuse for human consumption as the main strategy, but the problem is that this disposal is still high. So I'll leave that here on that note, because I do want to move on to the next topic that we're looking at, the food waste reporting. And food waste reporting mainly relates to larger organizations, so you wouldn't expect to see a reporting, external reporting by the SMEs. So we're looking at larger companies here. We see that in the Ukraine in the UK, the government does recognize the importance of food waste, but the problem is there is no mandatory reporting on food waste. It seems potentially that there might be, because there is a call from retailers themselves for that guidance. So we do talk with food waste working group, which includes retailers from across the globe, and including most of them coming from the European Union. And we've been at those discussions too, and they call for that guidance from the government. European Union members started to collect some data on food waste and report that information. At the moment, similar as in the Ukraine, SDG 12.3 is voluntary, but in terms of disclosure, but there is a call, as I said, from the even retailers themselves for some guidance on how it should be reported. So that's basically our research question. So we're looking at how it is reported at the moment without the guidelines. So we looked at the European and UK companies to identify the current practice before these guidelines. So we use thematic and quality content analysis of the reports of companies, so 10 UK and 10 European Union retail companies, the biggest. We try to take the biggest companies. And we find that there's diversity in terms of how the information is being reported, where it is reported. They use different definitions. So Zahra mentioned today a definition on what is potentially food waste, and that it is discussed by the European Union. But the problem is it is still quite diverse, and how retailers understand under food waste, and what they include under that, and how they measure then food waste, and how they report it. So we in the UK, there's number sources in terms of information we looked at. We've identified where the companies are reporting food waste information. So that was included in annual reports, in sustainability reports or ESG reports. Some we looked at the website, but again, website only we capture the last year, obviously. And under other, that could be food waste reports, or food reports, or food and drink reports, or various other food waste related reports that companies provide. In the European Union, the difference was that some companies actually provided integrated reports as well. So again, the same period. When we're looking at the definition, what do companies recognize as food waste? Actually, 28% of firms provide very broad definition, and they say it's a food access. Some say it's unsold food, which is still consumable. Some then say that it's unsold or unsellable food, food that is not sellable or edible, less food distributed. So they deduct food that has been distributed potentially to charities. There are some organizations that provide a more detailed definition, and we try to link it with a framework. So they would say that they, for example, mainly focus on food that is not distributed for the human consumption. That would be the waste. So if it is given away to humans, so it is consumed by humans, it's not food waste, but the rest is a food waste. Yes, so for example, they would say unsold food that is sent to animal feed by based materials, anaerobic digestion, controlled combustion, or landfill, that is food waste. But the food that has been sold or has been eaten or was distributed for human consumption, it's not food waste. Some would say, so the next level we used for animal consumption. So unsold food and drinks, excluding food sent to human and animal consumption. So the rest becomes food waste. So you can see it's very diverse in terms of what they identified food waste. And that links us, and 17 firms do not provide definition at all. So it's completely different to then compare companies' performance. We can see that in terms of targets, so Zahra mentioned the target to reduce food waste by 2030 by half. The majority, yes, mentioned that metric. So we can see that's the main target for the companies. But then some of them have targets in between, so they can achieve that 50% in 2030. But at the same time, we do have companies that have other targets as well. So some of them are quite difficult then, to compare. So they would say reduce food waste by 1% by weight, or 100% of stores integrate with partners to donate food. What does it mean? How does it actually link to the UN goal? Well, it's not, and they don't have any other metric or targets. In terms of target metrics, again, it's very difficult because they all have different approaches. Some would say it's unsold food distributed for human and animal consumption, or it's food donated in tons, or it's food waste reduction in kilograms per square meter in terms of store size. Or they would have food waste per sales and etc. It's again very, very diverse across companies. Baseline, again, very different. For some companies do identify what they compare with, whether they've achieved the target or not, but we can see that a lot of companies do not actually provide this information, what their baseline is. And then if we we try to rank them, but it didn't actually work because we can see that they all use different approaches. They have different commitments, different target metrics, and different baselines. So from reporting perspective and from comparing perspective, what is important in accounting and reporting, we can't really understand or compare companies who is doing well and who is not doing so well. So we try to at least find some similarities between companies, potentially in this case, Cooperative and Asda similar. But even then, yes, maybe there's some similarity in terms of targets or reduced by 2030, and their baseline is similar. But even then, target metric is just not that much similar. And then Waitrose Iceland potentially, okay, they're similar in terms of their target metrics and baseline. If we're looking at the European context, again, there is a diversity in metrics and commitments, but maybe Delhaize and Kesko to some extent are similar. So they're looking at food waste to food sales, similar baseline. Again, 2030 probably is the main commitment, and maybe even results are quite similar. But then if we move on to other companies in the sample, it's very different. So we can see that some don't identify their baseline. It's not clear what's their target. And then their commitments are also different. Some talk about the meals that are donated rather than actually what has been the food waste. So yeah, so there is variation in terms of reporting. So it's difficult at the moment to actually compare companies and make informed decision how they've performed in that aspect. And there is a call that probably it needs to be potentially standardized. So there need to be some sort of guidance and reporting guidelines to help companies. Maybe it should be linked to something like emissions reporting, where we have some guidance on greenhouse gas emissions. Maybe what also could help if it is audited, and maybe if it is linked to remuneration of the key staff in the companies, then they would pay attention to food waste. Maybe there is need for benchmarking. Yeah, so, but then that has itself an implication. Probably there is some need for the guidance from the European Union, and to help organizations to deal with that challenging issue. Because again, there is no definition that everyone should be using, and that all leads to the problems of how they measure, how they count their food waste. So yeah, thank you so much. Do you have any questions on that?
Any questions from the audience? If not,
thank you. First of all, thank you. It's very interesting presentation, very interesting and deep research we see, and I have not questions because you explain very clearly that we have a lot thoughts about what we can do with it. Yes, and as a specialist of environmental protection, of course, I do research about not food wasting, but recycling domestic waste. Yes, and food wasting include domestic waste, and I think maybe to reduce food waste, we need to produce less of food. And according to observation, it's clear that the first state of the environment is in the developing countries. Developed countries is managed so good or less, but try to manage, and developing country is state very bad in this sphere. I think it depends on the education of the population of all people in the developing countries in general. Education on environmental science, education in general, whole. And I think the issue is not manage general waste, that is to reduce use, production, and waste. Also, in my opinion, the level of population, the level of pollution, the level of waste also depends on the unemployment level. I think unemployment level in developing countries, and in general the development of the people's well-being. Of course, it's my opinion.
Thank you for your comments. I think I agree. Developed countries are more advanced in terms of managing waste, and they're learning how to deal with food waste as well. They have less issues probably with food losses because they have maybe good storage and etc. So they've invested into that. But they do have a huge food waste because of consumer behavior, and especially at the consumer level. So if you are looking at the consumer waste, it's an interesting area to explore their practices, their attitudes, and there are studies that are looking at the consumer behavior as well, how they the attitudes to the food waste and what they can do to actually reduce their own food waste.
The simple example, a very simple example, in developing countries is very good managing of healthy lifestyle and less products of food, and of course, as a result, food waste is very less.
In a developing country, yeah?
In a developed country.
A developed country.
Yeah, developed country. Yes. Because people in developed country try to manage their healthy lifestyle. I think I can't.
I think in developed countries it's really polar opposite. There are this bunch of population which is amazing and educated and tries to look after their health and is very aware. And then there is another bunch that we don't see them. We don't, especially being in our castles of universities, like towers, academic towers, we don't see, but there is this whole bunch of population that just is complete opposite.
Yes.
Like Rosa, when you were studying these things, do you see, like in Ukraine, you did your measures in Ukraine, right? Did you see this big differences, polar differences, or was it more?
Yeah, we didn't do research on the customers, so we didn't look at that stage.
No.
But we find that SMEs do manage better. So it seems they have quite low waste, but I think it's related to the size of the company. So they have to deal with less produce compared to bigger organization, which has a exposure to the volumes of food that they have to deal with and rotate to make sure that nothing is wasted, and if it is, then they have to deal with that. So it is more difficult in bigger retail store, if you imagine, even compared to smaller one. If it's individual and they own that, so you can imagine an individual who is selling something on the market, right? So they would know, that would be more efficient. Maybe they would take some of it even home and eat it at home, make it out of it something. But I find that the literature says that in developed country, the issue is more about actually consumers, that they're overbuying. So if they're going to the shop, they have the practice to go once maybe in a week in a shop, buy lots of stuff, and then this food is perishing because they bought too much and they are throwing that food away. In developing country, the issue is opposite. At the moment there is an issue more with food losses because of storing food. So that's about, there's no facilities to make sure that this food is stored properly, so it is then sold in the later stages of the supply chain. So that's the proportion of food losses are higher in developing country than in developed country. And I think maybe in developing country, people are more cautious about how much they are buying. But maybe, I'm not sure because didn't do that research, but maybe it relates to the welfare of the family, whether they are allowed to buy more produce, and potentially that leads to the waste as well. So that could be looked at in the future.
And as someone studying this topic, which do you think is more important, is more problematic, food waste or food loss? or equal?
I think equal. So from the issue is food losses, how it is measured. The countries are looking at specific commodities which are important for them. So, for example, in Ukraine, that probably would be a wheat, right? Or sunflower or things like that. So they have a number of commodities, the key commodities, and they would measure those and how much of that is lost. So the key ones. Food waste captures waste overall. I think all of it important, but food waste, why it's important is because it was intended for human consumption and it is wasted instead of being eaten by somebody. So it should be redistributed. So I'm sure there are some charities that help to feed people who are, I don't know, homeless or have no access to food or poor people. And why not to give them access to nourished food, you know, because potentially they don't have access to fruits and vegetables. That would help to support their health, and maybe this way you can also reduce the impact on the health system of the whole country if you provide healthy opportunity for people.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions,
Thank you.
comments?
It was very interesting, really.
Thank you.
It was indeed.
Well, I wanted to thank Rosa for this beautiful meeting. I didn't really had a lot of information about like food waste and all that stuff, but I just really wanted to appreciate her, and I learned a lot of stuff, and I really enjoyed it, and it was really good listening to her and all of you guys talking and trying to communicate and ask some other questions. It was really beautiful and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dinara. We're glad it was useful. If no more comments, if nothing else you would like to add, Rosa, I will conclude. Rosa is still continuing to do her research, so if anyone has some ideas in Azerbaijan context to study, to do collaborations, please do contact her. Or if you are working on these topics yourselves, let her know. Maybe there may be some knowledge exchange between us. And this link, the recording will be distributed to other parties. So whoever listens to it later on, please do join in the conversation, comment in the Facebook post, and let us know what you think. And thank you again, Rosa. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, Zahra, for
Thank you.
organizing the event. It was very nice. Nice to meet you all. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure for us. Have a good day.
Thank
Bye.
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 Good luck to everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck with your research indeed.